Oh, I have to say this was hard. Really, really hard. Actually, harder than doing the fiction list. Hello, everybody. Welcome to welcome back to Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark. And I hope very much indeed that you are doing well. And today I'm going to give you my top three non-fiction for 2023. So top three in 23 non-fiction. And as I just said there at the beginning, it was difficult, really difficult. I read a lot of great non-fiction this past year, and I'm still reading some. But I thought, I've got to make the list. I can always do an addendum video later on, should anything in the last couple of weeks surpass the three I've chosen. Now, unlike the fiction video, where I may have mentioned a few also rans, I've decided to at least share some of those also rans with you, because I think they're worthy of an honourable mention. So let's just go through those first. So one which I suppose I should really have checked. I know this is based on the author's life. Now, whether it's classified as a series of short stories that are apocryphal or whatnot, I'm not entirely sure. But I'm going to take it as non-fiction. So hopefully you'll agree with me. And that's Mikhail Bulgakov's Young Doctor's Notebook, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I found it very interesting. It follows, of course, Bulgakov's experiences as a doctor in very rural Russia during the course of the Russian Revolution. And it's just incredible, really, the difficulties and things that he had to face. Now, moving on, a book that was very much part of Historathon 2023 and one I thoroughly enjoyed. And should you want to read it in 2024, I believe Very Literary Carrie has chosen it as a book of the month, for one of the months. The month escapes me at the moment, for her wonderful Black Hearts book club. So I'm sure you can go over to her channel and join in should you want to. And that's Shelley Bahouk's The Dark Queens, which follows the lives of two Frankish queens in the 6th century. And it was very gripping, I have to say, extremely gripping story. Very wonderfully told by Bahouk there, and well worth your time reading. Another one I would recommend is Andrew Heavens's The Prince and the Plunder. Not one I've seen mentioned on BookTube, but I would, say go and read it. It's an interesting book in the sense that it's kind of two stories in one. It follows Theodorus, is it? The son of Theodorus, the one of the kings or emperors of Ethiopia, who ends up killing himself due to a misunderstanding that caused a British invasion of Abyssinia or Ethiopia. And then the British decide to take his son as kind of a ward of the crown, so to speak, and bring him back to England to be educated, with a possibility, I suppose, in the future of returning him to Abyssinia as a friendly king. And it's a very interesting, fascinating account of the young man's life. However, sadly, of course, it doesn't work out that way, but I won't say any more on that. And the second half of the book follows all the plunder that the British soldiers literally stole from Ethiopia or Abyssinia. And Heavens tells the story very well indeed. And next up, we have one of many of his books that could be on this list, is Simon Sebag Montefiore's Catherine the Great and Potemkin, which probably doesn't need much explanation, but it follows the lives of course, the Russian Tsarina Catherine the Great. I suppose, is she a Tsarina or a Tsar? Because Tsarina is usually like the wife, isn't it, of a Tsar, and she was kind of a Tsar in her own right. But anyway, follows her life and, of course, relationship and the life of Grigory Potemkin, her erstwhile love of her life, really. And it's very much worth your time. Absolutely fantastic book, and I have to say this author's never disappointed me, and it very narrowly missed out on being one of the chosen three. Is David Grann's The Wager, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder. Yes, indeed, it is all those things and more, following the ill-fated misadventures of HMS Wager and their shipwreck in Tierra del Fuego, and all the things they have to contend with. Very gripping, fascinating read, that. Another one that was a real corker, but didn't. I would have put it on the list, but I wanted to. There was just the three books I chose just had something different, and that's really the reason. Because I adore this author. Again, he never disappoints me. I think he's one of the best narrative writers of history going at the moment, and that's Charles Milton and his fantastic book Russian Roulette, which is all about the early espionage adventures and plots and things like that during the Russian Revolution and the subsequent few years. Says Russian Roulette, a deadly game, how British spies thwarted Lenin's global plot. It reads like a John Buchan thriller or something like that, really. But of course, everything in it is true, so that makes it all the more exciting. I could have gone for, again, a couple of this author's works, like Giles Moulton's Russian Roulette. Ben Macintyre is also a great writer of the spy genre, and as I said, like Russian Roulette, it was part of my Dr. November reading, which was an event celebrating spy fiction and non-fiction from the Russian Revolution to the collapse of communism. And the one I chose, even though A Spy Among Friends, which is the story of Kim Philby, was fantastic, this one just edged it probably, which was The Spy and the Traitor, the story of Oleg Godorevsky and his spying for the British, and then his amazing escape from the Soviet Union. And then one that, had I read this in 24 and could have had 4 for 24, would definitely have been on the list. And it was really something outside of what I would perhaps normally have read. And it was Elizabeth Becker's You Don't Belong Here, How Three Women Rewrote the Story of War. And it follows the lives of three journalists, one American, one Australian, and one French photojournalist during the war in Vietnam and Cambodia. And it is absolutely wonderful, fascinating account of war correspondency, and especially, of course, what women had to go through during that time in order to be taken seriously. But yeah, you won't go wrong if you pick this up. It's very engaging. Okay, now we head into the top 3 for 23, and I went with Michael Taylor's The Interest, How the British Establishment Resisted the Abolition of Slavery. I found this quite unputdownable. It follows, of course, the campaign of the abolitionists to get the slave trade and slavery itself abolished. There are some amazing characters in that camp, but it also looks, of course, in great detail about how much of the establishment, be it politicians of the time or well-known companies that still exist today, did everything they could to throw money at the anti-abolitionist cause to resist any move to abolish slavery. And it's quite shocking, really. Of course, it does go into detail about the brutality of slavery, as well as the lives of those who fought against it and did their best to bring about the eventual abolition of both slavery and the slave trade. Taylor tells the story once again in a very engaging and very well formed narrative that does keep your interest. And yeah, everybody should read it, really, I think. And another one that I believe everybody should read, despite the fact that it's extremely difficult to read, not in terms of the writing style, but just in terms of the subject matter, is Christina Lamb's Our Bodies, Their Battlefield, What War Does to Women. This was, as a man, in some ways it was, I can't obviously say it was more of a difficult read, because actually I suppose if I were a woman, it would be more difficult, in terms of the fact that the things that happen in here could more easily befall me than being a man, perhaps. But of course, the sexual violence and rape is not just limited to women in conflict situations, but of course it affects certainly many more of them. But in it, Lamb explores different conflicts and how women are treated, in terms of the way that often men will use rape as a weapon of war. It's extremely moving stuff, and again, I think an extremely important book that everybody should read, because, I'm sure a lot of the people who commit these horrendous crimes, had they not been in those situations, would have been probably fairly normal people, because it seems that, these horrors of wars or indoctrination or brainwashing or whatever has brought about, has turned these possibly normal people into monsters. Although, of course, I would like to think, put in that situation, I wouldn't be somebody who would do something like that. So then again, perhaps you have a particular persuasion towards it or not. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's an important book, and everybody should read it, despite the fact that it is somewhat traumatic and extremely emotionally disturbing read. But should go for that. And then to finish off, again, those top three are not really in any particular order, because they're vastly different subject matters. I will finish off with something a bit lighter, and something that I suppose does deserve this number one spot. The reason I left it till last is because it's the only one I actually have a physical copy of, or at least the only one that had an easily accessible physical copy. And it came about through, and it links nicely, I suppose, with the top three for 23 in fiction, which is Les Miserables. And it's David Bellos's The Novel of the Century, The Extraordinary Adventure of Les Miserables. And it is a biography, if you like, of the novel and how it came into being, and all the things that Victor Hugo had to put up with in getting it written, as well as, of course, it goes into how it was published and its publication history. But of course, it can't avoid being, in part, a biography of Victor Hugo, at least during and up to the time that he wrote Les Mis. This is a wonderful book, and if you read Les Miserables during the course of 2024, then you would be well advised to read this, because I think it nicely rounds off the experience of reading that wonderful, wonderful novel. So there we have it. Those are my top three, plus also rans. So I suppose I've been a bit cheeky, because maybe it was like more of a top 10 or something. But look, technically it is my top three plus honourable mentions of fiction and of non-fiction, during the course of 2023. Do please let me know down below your top three non-fiction books that you've read during this year. If you like reading non-fiction, maybe you don't. I do understand that it's not super popular. I can't really understand why, because I think it's a fantastic genre, and you know, I think it's wonderful that people like Book Olive have this event like Nonfiction November to try and encourage people to read more nonfiction, because if you get a good work of nonfiction, it's hands down better than any novel. But that's my 2 cents worth. So everybody, thank you very much, and yeah, I look forward to reading your comments. Do take care. All the best. Bye bye.